All right, my friends, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I'm going to jump the tracks a little bit and do something I haven't done in a while, which is give you a book recommendation. Now, I know that statistically speaking, most people read less than a book a year. Now, that might be kind of shocking to you because you might be thinking to yourself, well, I know I read less than a book a year, but I wouldn't think most people would. Most people don't read that much. And I'm hoping that by giving you my suggestion that you'll pick this up and find it as interesting as I did, and it'll spur you on to reading more often and discover what you've been missing out on all along. So today, the book I'm going to share with you is called The Real Lolita by Sarah Weinman. A lost girl, an unthinkable crime, and a scandalous masterpiece. Okay, this is 270 readable pages. I say that because you're probably not going to read the acknowledgments, and that's about where it ends. So 270 pages is published by HarperCollins, publishers, I believe, 2018. So it's been out for about 5 years. If you want to know who Sarah Weinman is, what her credentials are, here's what it says in the back. It says, Sarah Weinman is the editor of Women Crime Writers, 8 suspense novels of the 1940s and 50s, and Troubled Daughters, Twisted Wives. That sounds interesting. A journalist and critic, Weinman has written for the New York Times, Vanity Fair, and the Washington Post, among other outlets. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. Okay, so you can follow her on Twitter and Instagram, apparently. And she has her own website, sarahweinman.com. And I'm going to give you the synopsis on the back of this book to just be a place to start in this video. In 1948, Sally Horner was just 11 years old when she was kidnapped by a man claiming to be an FBI agent. 7 years later, Vladimir Nabokov published Lolita, perhaps the most notorious novel of the 20th century. Sarah Weinman's investigation into how the two are connected is a thrilling, heartbreaking mix of literary scholarship, true crime writing, and expert storytelling. Let me stop for a moment. I've got to get on to my cat. All right, we got a stray cat outside that's made the acquaintance of my cats, and now he thinks he belongs here, and they just kind of play with each other through the screen. It drives me nuts. Anyway, so let's start talking about this. So in 1948, as it says, 11-year-old Sally Horner, the second daughter of a single mom whose husband died when Sally was like 6 years old, worked arduously and was very preoccupied with trying to sustain a living to be able to take care of her children. But Sally was 11, and she was a good girl, okay? But she was out with some friends one day, and under the influence and pressure of her friends, she decided she was going to steal something at the pharmacy, okay? Now, this is not what Sally did, okay? This doesn't define her. It was her first time ever doing something like this, and it made her nervous. She grabbed some candy, put it in her pocket. She attempted to walk out the door, and a man grabbed her arm. This man's name was Frank LaSalle. Okay? Frank LaSalle was an ex-convict, and he looked like one. He looked like the typical creepy, hardened criminal that you would find in a psychological murder mystery crime thriller movie. Okay, so he's very intimidating when he had laid his hand on Sally's wrist, and he threatened her with several things, saying, listen, I saw what you did, you could go to reform school, so on and so forth. Well, it made her nervous. She was very intimidated. She started crying a lot. And he says, but look, you're in luck. I'm an FBI agent, and we can make this thing go away. What I want you to do is just report back to me, okay? It wasn't outlined as exactly how she was supposed to do that, and I don't think Sally knew. She went home scared to death, continued to go on to school, never really saw anything about it, never heard anything from him for a while. The fear kind of subsided, and then I think it was something like 6 months later, don't quote me on that, something like 6 months later, she happened to run into Frank LaSalle again, just by chance. And he immediately confronted her with this history between him and her. I said, look, you're going to have to come with me now. It's time to go. And I need you to call your mother and give her this story. Because we don't want her finding out what you did, right? Because Sally hadn't divulged this. She knew she would be in trouble. So Frank LaSalle convinced her that we don't have to tell your mother what happened. We can just wipe this slate clean. You just come with me. You do what you're told. You give her the story. And so Sally called her mother and said, look, listen, my girlfriend at school wants to go to the beach. I can go with her parents, so I'm with her dad now. And can I go? Can I go? And her mother apprehensively said, well, okay, I guess. I am paraphrasing all this, of course. I'm probably not telling the story as well as Sarah Weinman does. I'm just trying to get through it quickly. And so she did let her go, and she regretted it deeply much later on because Sally was gone for nearly 2 years. Okay? Frank LaSalle was a pedophile. Obviously, as you can tell from the story, it doesn't take some phantom hand writing on a wall to let you know this. So, anyway, she was used and abused by Frank LaSalle. It doesn't ever mention that he physically beat her, but he did sexually take advantage of her. And and it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing because her parents, well, her mother, I should say, her father. Like I said, her father had already passed away, but her her mother and the people who loved her felt like she might possibly be dead. Well, who wouldn't, right? And so this was very troubling. And Sally was always in survival mode, and had she had been enrolled in Catholic schools wherever she went, moved around a lot, maintained good grades the whole time she did it, and had to assume a different identity. And so did Frank LaSalle. He had many aliases. An investigation ensued. Things were looked into, but the trails were they disappeared. And so it was very harrowing for everybody involved. And eventually Sally did come back home because at the behest of a neighbor, she was able to make a phone call to the FBI. And there's a whole long story behind all this. It's just fascinating to read. Now, the reason why this is called the real Lolita is because obviously there's another Lolita, right? Well, as it mentioned before, 7 years later after this occurred, in 1955, Vladimir Nabokov, a lot of people say his name Nabokov, but the author himself pronounces it Nabokov. This is why I say it that way. I feel like I just said too much. Anyway, he wrote this book called Lolita. It was a very disturbing book, very, very scandalous, very controversial for its time. It's about a man named Humbert that he had a very intense longing for young girls, underage girls. And so he married Charlotte Hayes. This is all fictional, by the way. He married Charlotte Hayes to get to Dolores Hayes. That was, Dolores in the book was 12 years old. And, Charlotte, she ended up walking out in front of a bus, getting killed, and that was just worked out for Humbert. And that way he had Dolores all to himself. And so you read about this, and it's very obvious what's going on. There are so many angles it's worked by, and so many people went up in arms about it. And there was actually several different movies made called Lolita. I think one was in the 1960s, another one in 1997. And people feel all sorts of ways about it. And the reason why is because they question the author, Nabokov. They question, how would you know so much about this kind of thing that you could write about it? Or do you have pedophilic tendencies yourself? Well, I like how the author handles this. She says, no one questions a crime writer or someone who writes about serial killers in this way. If you write about abuse in any other form, you're not going to ask, do they do this too? Is just how they know about this stuff? Well, you don't have to. You don't have to be personally experiencing or involved in something like that to be able to write about it. And I think that's where she does a good job of not defending Nabokov, but explaining that there's no evidence to suggest that he was a pedophile himself. On the contrary. But the other scandal comes in where people question, did he get his idea for the book Lolita from this story about Sally Horner? The answer is yes and no. He always denied it, even when he was confronted with it, and his wife Vera denied it also. But it seems to be heavily suggested that it's kind of hard to avoid, that he couldn't have helped draw direct, there can't help but be direct parallels between the true story of Sally Horner and the fictional story about Dolores Hayes and Humbert Humbert. Okay? Now, I don't personally have a problem with it as far as he wasn't plagiarizing. People write books all the time, grabbing ideas from real life. That's largely how a lot of fiction is written, unless it's just so fantastical that it's not even possible. But the book Lolita is really good. I have read it, and it is disturbing. Now, I will say, let me say this about Lolita real quick, the book by Vladimir Nabokov. While it's disturbing to read, I think it's a good idea to do so because it will help you to get inside the mind. And, well, I don't know about the mind, but it will help you to understand how pedophiles work and what they're willing to do, the hoops they're willing to jump through, and the lies they're willing to tell, and the threats they're willing to make in order to get what they want. And if you are somebody who has experienced being taken advantage of and abused or molested by an adult when you were a child, you already know this. But if you haven't, you need to kind of get an idea of what they're willing to do and all that I've just mentioned. And Lolita is a very good book for that, in my opinion. But this book, The Real Lolita, is very, like I said, it's very well written. I highly suggest it. If you end up reading it for yourself, please let me know. I would be interested in swapping ideas and opinions and remarks about it because I think it's well worth it. I'm gonna provide an Amazon link down below where you'll be able to purchase this for yourself, much less expensive than what I paid for it. And I think, and it's not an expensive book, but you will be able to get a discount on this book through the Amazon link that I provide. So that's the book that I have for you this week. Maybe I'll do a lot more of these. If you want to know what I have in my beard today, I'm actually using Artist Man's E4 beard oil. This is a very nice citrus scent. It's just a real winner in my opinion. And then I'm also using their E4 beard butter. And this is some of the smoothest. I just got this, as you can tell. There's only like one swipe taken out of it. Smoothest, nicest smelling. I love Artist Man, and I love their E4. If you are interested in getting this for yourself, use my code Greg20. It'll save you 20%. Next week, there is a special deal going on where you can get 25% off. So stay tuned, be looking for that. You can even wait till then if you want to get some of this or anything else from them. But just click on the link down below, use the code at checkout, and you should be able to get a pretty nice discount for everything you want. All right, guys, I'm gonna get going. I hope you enjoy your day, and I'll just catch you in the next one. All right, bye-bye.